Another open stage, another post-mortem. It's happened yet again. The open stage I most recently ran has come to a kind of sudden and unexpected demise. Uh, Venue kind of reached out to me and let me know that the numbers weren't working for them. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and talk also about a conversation I had, an opportunity to host that I politely declined, and the reasons for that because they are somewhat related. So, what happened? Um, how were those numbers? So, I would say, in short, without having access to everything they were looking at, this is a horses to water kind of situation. So, this was actually a very healthy open stage from an attendance perspective. We averaged in the 6 months that the open stage ran, we averaged just short of a full list in terms of attendance, and that included uh, the highest attendance that I've ever had in a 3-hour format, the highest single attendance. Um, we had a lot of players coming down. We had a lot of regulars. We had a lot of new people checking us out. We're getting the word out. From my perspective as a host, while you always have to be working on attendance, you always have to be getting that word out fresh. You always have to be beating the bushes and pounding the pavement. I was not overly concerned about um, our general attendance, but I did note, um, and I did note that people were coming, but they're here now. How are you going to capitalize on this attendance? How's the venue going to capitalize on the attendance? And this particular venue had very limited means to capitalize. Not they didn't have as much available for sale for food and drink options, and so there's a lot of people sitting there kind of nursing, you know, a single kombucha that they've purchased to support the venue, but uh, not having any snacks, not having a second thing, not having a different thing if kombucha's not their speed. And I think that that's something that was pretty evident. Is that, and I think back to some other open stages that I've run that um, have handled that a little differently. That have taken the uh, taken the opportunity to try something different, to try something new, to maximize, to capitalize. I think back to, say, for instance, the Blind Ox, started having pizza, where they'd previously been a place that didn't really have food or would let people bring in outside food. They saw, we're going to have a bunch of people sitting here for 3 hours. It's a natural opportunity to give them something to eat. And I wasn't part of those discussions, but I saw that, the wheels were turning and they got it from here. And one of the differences, looking back, between that situation and this situation is the uh, venue engagement, specifically management engagement. The owner slash manager of this most recent place never actually came down. We never met face to face. He never came down, never saw the open stage with his own eyes. Now, obviously, he's got employees there who can tell him what's going on. But I contrast that with places like the Abstract in Arvada that I used to run, Blind Ox, which were long-running, successful open stages where the ownership was very engaged on site, and like I said, they kind of had an attitude of, I got it from here. That's my business, is figuring out what to do with a bunch of people who walked in the door. As opposed to, well, it's not boosting kombucha sales to have a bunch of people walk through the door, but instead like working that problem from their end, which my opinion, I'm biased, is that's your end of the bargain. My end of the bargain is running a great open stage and doing all the things that that it takes to get people there and get people happy about coming back and make it, cultivate it into a reliable happening. Um, so switching gears, just before that that announcement, I had a conversation with a different venue. I was there as a player, and I guess that my reputation as an open stage host preceded me. And the owner said, "Hey, you're the Cody Weathers who does open stages around town, right?" And why, yes. We had a conversation about he was interested in exploring the idea of having an open stage, and very polite conversation, very. But I ultimately decided against going forward with that, and it was because mostly in the course of that conversation, the first thing he asked me was like candidly, you know, do you mind me asking, what do you charge? I told him my number for a 3-hour format, and he kind of balked at it, and that to me was, ultimately like where it was gonna be hard to come back from that. He kind of winced, like, ugh, it's hard to give guarantees, and he went into kind of how he's moving away from guarantees in general with live music. They have a lot of live. They're very active new venue trying to cultivate live music and they're having their own struggles, but their heart's in it. Like their heart's in the right place. They are very committed to music as part of their identity, which kind of drew me into the conversation. But they're struggling with the cost associated with having live music and with giving guarantees to performers and giving guarantees to open stage hosts. Ultimately, the other factors that came into play were that, as a host, what's the value that I bring? It's my ability as a host, but it's also I bring the gear to places that don't have the gear. I run the gear. This is a place because of their commitment to live music. They've got um, they've got the gear and they've got a sound person, and that complicates um, the economics of hiring me and also paying a sound person. And what do I bring if all I'm doing is hosting? You can see how it suddenly doesn't sound like I'm worth that much on on one piece of paper. There was some thought of what if we did like a single one and you kick it off and bring your people and then we'll take it from there. And one thing I'm careful to never do as a host, just because I think of how this would feel as a player. I have, because I'm giving people um, video, because I'm sending them links to download video. I have a contact list. I have basically a mailing list of people who have kind of consented to get some information from me. I never sell that, divulge that, share that with any. Never like let that cross pollinate somebody's venue mailing list. That is just how I feel about mailing lists in general. Contact lists is that it's kind of a sacred trust as far as I'm concerned, to not become spammy, to not you know give that out to places that people didn't choose to divulge it. So I don't sell access to quote my people um, as a just as sort of a hard rule for myself, practically an ethical consideration as far as I'm concerned. Um, the other kind of red flag that I saw, which was maybe foretold what was about to happen, is this sense of this wasn't just like an interest. This was a lifeboat. This was a rescue. Like we need not just a solution for a slow night, but somehow we got to ignite our entire identity, and it's a lot of weight to put on the shoulders of an open stage. So yeah, I could bring in, we could do an open stage, and I would only bring in, fingers crossed, 9 to 12 people every time, and few people with them, and that ain't nothing, but it's also not gonna save your business if you're not poised to take it from there, to capitalize, to maximize, to have eyes on, and to work with it, to make that work doing what you do as a business. So just some thoughts, and I'm sure that there's been actually quite a lot of fiery discussion, not surrounding me, but in local forums surrounding this exact topic of some business owners getting a little bit prickly about some uh, musicians who are kind of complaining about this hands off, you know, support our business. That's what really matters. Without our business, you don't have a place to play kind of narrative. I don't think I really buy into either side, but I do know that it's a constant struggle, and some musicians and business owners are a symbiotic match where they're going to help each other out, and sometimes there's tension that just you can't get past, or misunderstandings or miscomprehension of what the relationship really is. So that's my post-mortem, is that from my perspective, horses to water. I'll bring the horses, you work on the water. At some point, venue's got to decide that they're in charge of how to capitalize, and that they're gonna capitalize, and that they'll take it from here. That didn't happen this time, and that's why my open stage ended. So until next time, see you at the open stage.